Imagine you're standing in a vast library, thousands of books stretching floor from to ceiling, every shelf packed with centuries of accumulated knowledge. Now imagine that library almost never existed. When people think about history of technology, they think of inventors working alone in a candlelit room, of scientific revolution, toppling old ideas, of reason finally breaking free from religion. But that story, that religions and science were always at war, is incomplete. In fact, it may be one of the greatest misconceptions in the human history. Today, I want to show you on or want to take you on a journey through time to show you how Christianity, perhaps more than any other single force in the Western world, quietly, persistently, and profoundly shaped the advancement of technology as we knew it. First, let's go back to around the 6th century AD. The Roman Empire has collapsed, the cities are crumbling, the roads are falling apart, and across Europe, much of the ancient world knowledge is at risk of being lost forever. Enter the monks. Benedictine monasteries, I'm sorry if I butchered that, became the preserver of civilization. Monk didn't just copy religious texts, they copied Aristotle, Euclid, Pliny the Elder. They preserved agricultural treatises, medical knowledge, mathematical principle. Without them, the intellectual foundation of the Western world might have been reduced to ash. But they didn't just preserve the knowledge, they innovated. Monasteries, communities were the most technological advanced organization of medieval Europe. They engineered sophisticated water mills to grind grain and power machinery. They developed complex irrigation systems, built precision clocks to keep the hours of prayer, and brewed medical remedies that laid early groundwork for pharmacology. The monks worked because they believed hard work was sacred. Saint Benedict motto, ora et labora, pray and work, wasn't just spiritual, it was unintentionally a philosophy of applied science. Now, fast forward to the first 11th and the 12th centuries. Something extraordinary is happening. Across Europe, institutions are being founded that will change the world. The first university, Bologna, Oxford, Paris, Cambridge, Salamanca. Every single of these early universities founded under the church or by deeply Christian scholars. The university was not a secular reason against Christianity. It was Christianity organizing knowledge. And here is where it gets interesting for technology. Inside these universities, scholars are called scholarists began to argue that God, as a rational creator, made the universe governed by rational law. That meant the universe could be studied, measured, and understood through reason. This theological conviction that the cosmos has order because its creator is orderly, because the philosophical bedrock of scientific method. Roger Bacon, a 13th Franciscan friar, is often called forefather of modern science. He insisted on empirical observation and experimentation. radical ideas at the time, rooted in his belief that studying nature was a way to honor God. The Christian worldview didn't suppress the inquiry. In many cases, it demands it. Now let's talk about one of the most revolutionary technology in human history, the printing press. Johannes Gutenberg invented the movable type printing press around 1400. His first major project, the Bible. His motivation to make scripture accessible to ordinary people, a deeply Christian goal. What happened next was an information explosion unlike anything the world had ever seen. Within 50 years of Gutenberg's invention, of 20 million books had been printed all across Europe. Ideas, scientific, theological, and philosophical, could now spread at a speed that was previously unimaginable. The Protestant Reformation was dependent on the printing press to distribute Martin Luther ideas, inadvertently turbocharged the spread of knowledge. When literacy became a spiritual virtue, when reading the Bible yourself was seen as a religious duty, literacy rate across Protestant Europe, especially Europe, climbed dramatically, and a literate population is a population that can read scientific paper, engineering manual, and technological instruction. The printing was born in faith, but it became the engine of scientific revolution. Speaking of which, let's address the elephant in the room. What about Galileo? What about the church suppressing science? Yes, that were conflicts. Yes, there were tragic episodes of censorship. I won't pretend otherwise. But consider the scientists themselves. Nicolaus Copernicus, a Catholic canon, gave us the heliocentric model of the solar system. Johannes Kepler, a devout Lutheran, discovered the law of planetary motion and wrote that he merely thinking God thought after him. Blaise Pascal, a passionate Christian mystic, invented one of the earliest calculators and made the foundational contribution to probability theory. George Mendel, an Augustine Friel, discovered the law of genetics in his monastery garden. Isaac Newton, perhaps the greatest scientist in history, wrote more about theology than he did about physics. Newton, understanding the law of nature was an act of worship. There were not many people doing science despite their faith. There were people doing science because of it. They believe a rational God made a rational universe, and they dedicated themselves to uncovering that order. So, what does this leave us? History is a rare form. History is simply one of the rare force against another. The relationship between Christianity and technology is not a war. It is not even a truce. It is at best a collaboration built on the belief that the world was made to be understood. The knowledge is a gift that humanity being called are called to cultivate the earth that they were given. The monastery preserved knowledge when the world forgot. The universities sympathized it. The printing press unleashed it. And the scientists who launched the modern era stood on the shoulder of that. More often than not, wore clerical robes. Next time someone tells you that religion and progress is opposite, remember the monk who built the first clock, the friar who mapped the stars, and the man who invented the printing press so that everyone could read. Progress, it turns out, had always had a complicated and remarkable partner. Thank you very much.